And I want to welcome Janet Phelan to the show live from Mexico with her pretty much weekly report, opening our eyes on some things that perhaps we may have missed. And welcome to the show, Janet.
Thank you, James. Actually, I'm interested in what you have to say about Flat Earth and the Flat Earth Society. I know someone here in Chiapas who is a proponent of this belief system that the Earth is actually flat. And it seems to me, personally, I just want to weigh in here for a second,
sure,
that this is so what happened, that this kind of, the development of this kind of belief may have something to do with, you know, the overwhelming effect of all the lies the government is telling us. I mean, it's kind of like returning to basics. Everything they say is false. You know, it's kind of that fallback position, I think. And the person I know who is a proponent of this belief is certainly just fed up to hear, you know, with government lies. So that was my perception.
It is like, good to question.
Can't believe anything these people say.
I mean, I tell you, my own self personally, when I had my own crisis and reevaluating reality, I had to start over again, basically, and go through, at least in the theological sense, I had to go from square one. And then I realized from doing the show that science is a religion and not fact-based. So then I had to go do the same thing with science. And so I can totally understand, and I have no problem with someone going back and going, wait a minute, is this really flat Earth? And starting out, it's there's two things I'll get into, is that there's the tools you use to determine reality, and those people who will name call when you try to do that. So, you know, that's kind of what I'm going to go into. But from one who's probably been called a few names in her life, what do you have for us today?
Moi? Moi?
Well, I do know some of your history. That's why I bring that up. You can, for those who do not know.
Calling me names? Who would call me a name?
You could find that all out in your book, Exile, by the way. So
you can actually find some of these names online. I'm some of the names contradict themselves. So, yeah, just pick a name, any name. I like Janet. I'll answer to Janet. Okay, so yeah, so one of the things I've been called is a rotten Jewish supremacist wench. And we're going to get into tonight some of my perceptions on what's going on between the U.S. and Israel, which prompted a deluded person to call me that. Because unlike so many people in the who are researching conspiracies and so forth, I do not believe that every single bad thing in the world that happens is the is the responsibility of Israel or the Jews. I just don't believe it. In fact, my basic contention at this point is that the United States is setting up Israel. And this is not a popular belief. It may be controversial, but I'm standing by it. And pursuant to that, I wrote an article published recently, which we had mentioned before, called Israel, the Psyop. Psyop as in psychological operation. And the Psyop aspect of this here is the U.S.'s fake, pretend friendship with the State of Israel, which is the kind of friendship, you know, what I am positing here is it's the kind of friendship where you reach out to shake someone's hand and then stab them in the back. So the article goes through the history of a number of issues in history having to do with the relationship between the United States, first with the Jews prior to the establishment of the State of Israel, and then as Israel was established, more betrayal by the United States. And I want to touch on a couple of the major issues in this article right now, and people can read it. It is on New Eastern Outlook, and they can certainly make up their own minds. But I think that given all of the duplicity and all of the lies that we now see on the coming out, emanating from Washington, D.C., I think that the fake friendship with Israel is something that needs to be looked at very seriously, because I do believe it's going to come and bite us in the back in possibly the worst way possible. And that's also discussed in the article. So the article, the issues I want to touch on briefly, start with the Evian Conference, which was held in July of 1938 on the initiative of President Roosevelt, which was the conference in Evian was convened to address the plight of Jewish refugees that were fleeing Nazi persecution in Eastern Europe. Now, this was in 38. Hitler has been quoted as being agreeable at that point in time to other countries accepting the Jews. And this is a quote here from Hitler: "I can only hope and expect that the other world, which has such deep sympathy for these criminals, Jews, will at least be generous enough to convert this sympathy into practical aid. We, on our part, are ready to put these criminals at the disposal of these countries for all I care, even on luxury ships." So Hitler was really on the record as being amenable, just take these people. Well, the Evian Conference did not take Hitler up on his offer. In fact, the Evian Conference failed to result in any offer of acceptance of substantially more refugees, any country except for the Dominican Republic. The Dominican Republic offered to accept a significant number of refugees. However, the U.S., according to sources, the U.S. and Great Britain had come to a little backroom pre-conference agreement wherein the Great Britain would not mention that the U.S. was not even filling its quotas for Jewish immigrants, and the United States would not bring up the possibility of British-governed Palestine as an option for the refugees. So it was a showcase, Evian. Now, the other conference that took place at a far more desperate juncture for Eastern European Jews took place in April 1943, which was at the time that the Warsaw Ghetto was burning. Jewish ghetto was burnt down, and this was a secret conference, and it took place in Bermuda. Lovely resort, right? And these world leaders got together to talk about, what are we going to do now? And again, they decided to do nothing. So the deal was that the conference would remain a secret, but they were not going to, they even rejected a plan to send food shipments to refugees who were starving in Eastern Europe. I mean, it's just like, we're not going to help these people. So, this is the kind of the jumping off place for the article. Also, then we go into some of the sabotage by highly placed U.S. officials, which were attempting to block the creation of Israel. The sabotage, lo and behold, was accomplished by members of the administration who had been involved in enterprises, companies, corporations, which were funding Hitler's Germany. One of these individuals was James Forrestal, who was Secretary of Defense at that time, and he had been president of Dillon Reed, which was a bank which financed Hitler. And he had also, Forrestal had also served on the board of the IG Farben-controlled General Aniline and Film Corporation while he was Under Secretary of the Navy in 1941. Now, these acts could be seen as treasonous. Nevertheless, back in the 40s, too, these were the kind of people who were running the country. So Forrestal had granted immunity to Standard Oil of New Jersey, whose ships were supplying the Nazis with oil. And this is important because Standard Oil of New Jersey was a company that was owned by the Rockefellers. And Nelson Rockefeller was working as a position of Assistant Secretary of State for Latin American Affairs, and also had worked as the coordinator for the Office of Inter-American Affairs at the time that the vote for the partition of Israel came in front of the UN. Now, Rockefeller's company, Standard Oil of New Jersey, as just mentioned, had been supplying the Nazis. And Rockefeller was essentially in charge of the Latin American vote because of his position in the positions that were just mentioned with the administration. And the Latin America, Israel was not going to be approved. I mean, basically, there were too many votes against it. And a lot of these no votes were indeed in South America. So according to the source I used here, which was The Secret War Against the Jews by John Loftus, the Rockefeller was approached by Mossad, that kind of, anyway, he was threatened with blackmail, that if he did not swing the vote, if he did not get those South American countries to vote for the partition of Israel, then he was going to be exposed. And lo and behold, on the day of the vote, all those South American countries which have been voting against swung their vote for. Now, according to John Loftus, there was a price that was paid for this, and the price was that the Nazi hunters in South America were told to back off. Like, don't touch our Nazis in Argentina, don't touch them in Uruguay, just leave them alone. So this is one of the reasons that those people were left alone. And this is basically, one of the backstories as to how Israel was created. There's more sabotage. I mean, really, people who want to get, a history, an alternative intelligence history of what has been going on between Israel and the United States, a history that is very well documented. John Loftus is not Jewish. He was he was in the Department of Justice as an attorney, and as such had access to a lot of these files that people can't see otherwise. And this book, The Secret War Against the Jews, is I think one of the most devastating intelligence histories that has been published. So the issues go on and on. The fall guy, Israel as the fall guy for Iran Contra, the Yom Kippur War, which President Nixon was briefed on before it happened and didn't tell the Jews. I mean, it really just, and that Yom Kippur War was almost fatal for Israel. At this point in time, I have profound concerns about the power brokers in Israel. And some information was received by me just in the last 24 hours that further cements these concerns. Back during, I believe it was called Operation Protective Edge, a year or so ago, when Israeli forces went into Gaza and bombed the tunnels that Hamas had created to tunnel under the border into Israel. Well, apparently, the Israeli forces were not allowed to finish the job and destroy the tunnels. They were called back before the tunnels were, they were called back by Netanyahu before the tunnel destruction was complete. Now, my question to my sources is, why would Netanyahu do that? And what I was told was that he was ordered by Obama, and that he was ordered to pull his people back and not destroy all of those tunnels which went in from Gaza into Israel. And a lot of weapons were found in those tunnels. The tunnels are considered to be a threat. So, number one, why would Obama tell Netanyahu to, stop the tunnel bombing and leave tunnels intact? And question number two, why would Netanyahu obey him? I think there's a secret handshake here that may involve not only members of the U.S. administration, but also members of the government of Israel. And I think there's a deal with the devil that's gone on that is going to end up with, very likely, with the reality of Henry Kissinger's prediction, which he had made about a year or so ago. He said he thought that Israel would cease to exist by 2020. And I think that this is at play. And I think that it really behooves all of us to drop our finger pointing, this group's doing this group's doing that, without enough substantiation. It seems to me that those in power are really working together, and some of them are working together for the destruction of their own people and their own country. And we are seeing this in the United States. We are seeing this very clearly by the behavior of those who are running this country. And unfortunately, it may involve, that level of compromise and corruption with other leaders of other countries as well. So, and I do want to say, because people have pointed out to me, some people do not believe that I have been substantially vocal enough about the treatment of the Palestinians. And I want to go on the record here. I think that Israel's treatment of the Palestinians has been very, very bad. I think that there is an awful lot that is going on in terms of the Israeli treatment of Palestinians that is unnecessary and harmful and heinous. And I also think that there is a psychological operation going on, because it is the treatment of the Palestinians that has resulted in many sectors with this feeling of outrage with Israel. And I believe that this feeling of outrage is being manufactured, and it is being promoted, and it is being endorsed for reasons that that may involve the destruction of Israel. And due to my concerns, which I have written about in my book, Exile, and also discussed in this article, Israel, the Psyop, it is the information that has come to me concerning what's going to happen after Israel's destroyed, which does lead into the biological weapons agenda, wherein the U.S. releases these weapons selectively against their own people. This scenario that we're going into is a nightmare scenario. And I think that it behooves us all to stand back and look at what's happening in the Middle East with honest and fearless eyes, because we are now in a world village. And what happens in a faraway country, to people who don't look like us and don't believe like us, and we can, in this sense, distance ourselves, it may affect us in ways that are absolutely devastating. So, this is my report for tonight.
I think it's
yeah, go ahead.
I think it's important that we stop pointing the finger at one group and focusing on that group as being the cause of all our troubles, unless you want to actually find the group, which would be the psychopathic leaders, the league of leaders, the oligarchs who fund it and manipulate those underneath them. And they come of all shapes, colors, and sizes. It's not any one type. And, of course, we outnumber all of them so ridiculously that really, I guess you want to look back into us, that they justify their abusing and using us and having us play against each other because we're dumb and subhuman. I did a video on that where I was giving evidence why they think we're just animals, and so therefore, just like you eat cows, you can eat humans because they're not human, they're animals. And so it's good that you're pointing out all these things to realize that whether Israel has involved in various things throughout the world that were bad, all countries are, and it's all because of the leadership abusing and using their pawns, the peoples.
There are sections in the Talmud which encourage Jews to look at people who are non-Jewish as animals. And I think this is one of the most unfortunate. I think, these sections of the Talmud are extremely damaging. Equally, there are people of other faiths, Christians and Islamists, who look at the Jews as being less than human because of their culture and their history. And I think this desire, which seems to be somehow embedded in our general tendencies to look at another group which is different from us and say they're not human, don't worry about that, they're not even human. And when people call Muslims, when they call them ragheads, they're doing the same thing. And
you're looking at selective, you're looking at selective traits that have basis in truth. You're taking them out, in truth examples, I should say. You're pulling them out and distilling them and pointing it and saying, see, that's the trouble, rather than realizing that all of these groups and all of the peoples have these issues that can be distilled out by the other ones. So, they're infidels, we're infidels, it's all ridiculous to think that God is behind it all, so to speak.
Right. Well, this gets very troubling. Recently, I was approached by a group of African Americans who believe that they are part of one of the lost tribes of Israel, and they are Christians. And they had invited me onto a conference call, to share certain perceptions about, what's coming down, which groups might be selectively targeted with biological weapons. And I certainly do believe that people of color within the United States are at risk for this. And lo and behold, somebody started, one of these black lost tribe of Israel Jewish Christians started bashing the Ashkenazi Jews on the conference call. And at that point, I almost threw up my hands, basically, my stance is that we're all children of God, and we are all essentially equal in that manifestation. Now, what we choose to do while we're here, if we choose to love each other, if we choose to help each other, or if we choose to call each other names, this is on us.
Yeah.
This is on us. So that's my take on it.
Well, it's good in this article. What's good about it is you're pulling out and showing how what the United States is doing as far as in Europe is doing about setting up the Jewish state for their troubles, because Lord knows others have been pulling out what Israel is doing. So we all have to see all these states have their hands dirty, and it's realized we stop pitting one against another. But okay, I appreciate your report and. Keep on keeping on.
Thank you, James. You have a good week, and see you next week.
All righty.
Good night.
Good night.